New normals. Welcome.
Welcome to the new normals.
Yes,
Agnes,
normals.
what was the new normal that we established in our last episode?
Do you remember? I remember. I think everyone who will watch our previous episode will remember because it's very kind of controversial, but it's very essential. It's about the new normal is failing is normal. Failing is part of the journey of evolution. So the more you fail, just celebrate that and move on.
And we want failure to feel good.
Exactly. Yeah,
And
maybe we
every
would
day
like to.
yeah. So we also advocate for every day being a new opportunity for setting your New Year resolution. So in case you have not succeeded, or if you have failed enough successfully in January, the past 2 weeks, be happy about it and celebrate it.
Yeah, who said that failure is should be accompanied by guilt and shame? Because you look at the small kids. What do? You say, oh, they learn, right? The same applies to you. You learn too. It's just, you try new things. You try different new behaviors. You try to change your life, your habits, your work, your thoughts. Not always with the first time works. So failure is just your expedition.
Absolutely. So what's difficult about picking up this new mindset of embracing failure? I feel that unless we change together, there's still this obstacle of sharing, with others about failure and not being judged by it.
Yes, the power of others, the magical, mystical, hardwired for the human race. We have been evolving as a very social species, and we constantly look at others, even sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, and that's a huge maybe revelation for many to more consciously look at what it is. So what do you think about it?
I I think we should really ask this question: how can we go against an established norm? And why do we usually not debate about whether a norm is good or not?
Right. Again, there might be different places, different people, different cultures, different locations, different habits, and even for a long time, which pretty much says it's normal to act like this here. But this question you just raised, I think it's of uttermost importance right now. So which of these norms are positively serving to the community, and maybe which norms possibly should be upgraded, updated?
Yes. As we know, habits are rules of thumb that generally rule out these exceptions because we want ourselves to do it automatically without questioning it, without having a second thought, because otherwise, you're just not going to establish any rules of thumb for your life. Norms are actually quite similar in that regard, that it's just collective habits, right? Collective rules of thumb. And it would be a chaos if every one of us kind of give our own inputs of when the norm should apply or not. So we develop this instinct of just going with the norm without thinking, without deliberating whether it's still a good norm or not. And that kind of habitual thinking of just blindly following norms can be problematic when we have outdated norms that are no longer constructive. It can even be harmful. So a few examples, if you think about female genital cutting, very, very strong social pressure for enforcing that practice. You can get exercise, it's very severe consequences. And even when nobody in the community thinks that it makes any sense anymore, nobody dares to talk about it. Or in some cases, there's a lot of taboo around very strong norms. So it's a balance to strike how can we talk about norms without getting socially punished, right? So you and I are now talking about this new norm of failing enough. Now, if we would, here there's not too much consequences, but if we would talk about it in a workplace, if we would talk about it at home and tell your parents, tell your boss and say, hey, this year I really want to fail enough because I want to discover, I want to do more trial and error, I don't want to be deterred by failure. It depends on what we think the reaction would be from our parents or from our boss, and maybe they would endorse it, so maybe not. And that fear of their rejection, of thinking that we're not ambitious enough, or we're not determined enough to perform well, that is just so consequential. So unless we all change together, unless we believe that this is a coordinated change, it's still hard. It feels so hard. So do you have any Agnes, do you have any solution or ideas of how we can go around this?
I believe many people have tried in their lives to change at least a few norms. This is how you go and to ask your friends, shall I start kiteboarding, for example? And this is how you collect from others their opinions. And or is it like a good thing to start intermittent fasting? And then you listen to the others. And then and currently, of course, you go on a YouTube and you watch how other people do it. You see the professionals, you see the critiques. So pretty much it's a wide open space for changing any norm you want. And if you look at possibly, if you look at the health related norms, smoking 100 years ago, yes. Yeah. Yes. And then slowly over time there were these discoveries, there is a correlation between the lung cancer numbers and the smoking cigarette numbers per person per whatever time frame. And this is how the informed and this is also, I think, another great aspect that most likely also we will bring in, how the information or transparency is helping to, first of all, clear the table, because everyone in their own biases bring in their own perceptions. And then if collectively we can look at what really is there, that's a very helpful way to actually ignite the change of the norm. So what do you think about that?
I like your optimistic view about norms being, actually there's a lot of space to play with new norms to establish and old norms to change. I think there's this difference that we often neglect between social proof and really social norm. And the kind of norms that are just, it's rational for you to just follow what others do. And so somebody started intermittent fasting, for example. And that's if many enough people do it, and if the success is visible, you want to follow because it's a good practice, and it's just and if everybody, let's say you're sitting in a restaurant, everybody run to the gates, very in a panic state, you want to follow because even if you don't see the fire, you can imagine that there's something that makes all these people run, so it makes sense to follow. Now there's another kind of norm, different kind of norm where there's actually personal interest to go away from the norm. Let's say about littering or taxation. I'm talking about economic incentive, right? So there's a public good where you could be a free rider and benefit from the public good by being the cheater yourself. And in that sense, in that kind of context, norms are there for the rationale or the benefits of the collective good. And it's not just like, you might not, at the individual level, you might be tempted, to break the norm. Now, in this kind of situations, we actually need a lot of social pressure to enforce the norm. Because in the former case, if that person don't run and follow the people, he might be killed by the fire. So there is less need of like, hey, you really need to run when other people run. But in the case of like taxes or cheating, we really want to say, hey, other people are paying taxes honestly, you should do the same. And lots of kind of social punishment. So if we think about wearing mask, in the past when there's no pandemic, you can say it's a fashionable thing to wear mask. Let's say, in the winter, it could be like it's cold. Actually, it's nice to wear a mask. But there's no need to put any you don't need to stare at that person and give an angry look when that person doesn't wear a mask, right? But now, because there is an externality when you don't wear a mask, you're actually hurting the public interest. Now we want the social pressure to be there, right? But similarly, for an old norm that doesn't make sense, and think about open defecation. It started out maybe as a custom, right? But over time, people might overestimate the social pressure to do this old practice and say, well, maybe my community member really prefer to defecate in the open. No, it just started out as an arbitrary norm. And now if we ask hey, is there any, am I hurting the public interest if I don't shit in the open? And the answer is no. It's I'm only helping the public by not shitting in the public. You should not fear any social pressure. So I'm just trying to think about, deliberate here with you. What are the scenarios where we should try to get rid of the norm pressure?
There are multiple. You can go to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Boom, yeah. 17 are there. It's just, if somebody is curious, okay, what kind of would be interesting a norm to really bring to life? Go to United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And I will just take very practical combustion engines. So cars using natural resource as oil or the oil products, like a petrol and stuff like that. And you can see the countries. You can see the Norway. And I think it was already somewhere around 5 years ago. Five years ago. Norway had 33% of their vehicles electric. Electric. And this is how they were. Of course, it's a governmental support and societal support, because if the society wouldn't elect these leaders at the government, they wouldn't be able to force the law. And if they would be doing the wrong or against the norm, people will not elect them for the next term, and everything goes back to the combustion engines. But it does go. And there are multiple examples of any daily choices. So you can change your own personal norms, which, as you said, are habits. And then also by you expressing any kind of new norm. So you prefer electric bicycle or electric any kind of vehicle. You are the example of this norm. And if you see these people around you, you feel supported socially. And then the tourist comes in and says, oh, everyone is electric here. Okay, maybe I should do it too.
Yeah. And there is this concept called pluralistic ignorance that I thought that is interesting for us to be aware of, because it makes it really simple for us to get rid of a norm. So let me see if I can pull it up. It's not.
Yes, it's there.
Yeah. So these are examples of norms that are either having a conflict between personal interest and public interest, like queuing, right? We put very strong pressure, and it's good that people expect a lot of other people expecting them not to break that norm. So and with coordination, driving on the left and the right, Sweden actually has this beautiful example of putting in a newspaper that all the bicycles should start and then followed by cars and then followed by truck. Of course, you have to change at the same time, because that doesn't make sense. So these are kind of interesting examples. And there is some norms where we really overestimate the harmful practice of it. For example, drinking on campus. There was a psychological study that shows students heavily overestimate how often other students drink, and when they were giving the reality check and say, in fact, a lot of students drink only one time or less per week, drinking just immediately dropped, because the previous sort of drinking a lot was based on the preference of if other people drink a lot, expect me to drink a lot, I will drink for the norm's sake, not for my own sake. And it was interesting to see just by showing the factual norm or descriptive or expectations, we were able to change the behavior rapidly.
Exactly. This is what I was working at the MIT 3 years. It was about transforming cities, so pretty much making things transparent. So 2,000 years ago, people were hunting on the field. They were seeing, oh, there are animals, there are other people digging ground, they're maybe doing some harvesting. Now we have this built infrastructure, which is non-transparent. But technology would be able to capture the data. We have them in their phones, but why don't we put them on the walls, on the buildings, or maybe lights, maybe screens? And then I give this example quite often. I went to one meeting at one of the MIT departments, and there were two people sitting. And I was asking, okay, there's this Massachusetts Avenue that crosses through the campus in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And there's a good traffic of cars and also bikers, bicyclists. And I was just for the curiosity and see the social norm playing from two examples of the socium there. And I asked them, okay, how much do you think are the average number of bicyclists on the Massachusetts Avenue per day? One person said, should be 100. And the other person said, no, it should be 1,000. And of course, no one really knows the answer unless you put the counter, but the counter is already there. And I didn't really check what was the exact number there. I did in another capital in a European country. But this example tells that people are living in their biases. And then if it's like a multiple bias of the same kind in multiple heads, that's a pluralistic ignorance. And then it just deviates. It distorts reality. And this is why we kind of, we fight with our own nature in this way. And what we are constantly suggesting is, make it transparent, close up the loop of how do you feel. Like if you do yourself a intermittent fasting, you feel the result in you, but collectively, it kind of takes a little bit longer time, but it's most of the times it's beneficial. And coming back to really filtering out the norms that are not beneficial anymore and drawing the attention to them.
Yeah. So fact checking on the pluralistic ignorance is a super quick win because a lot of our beliefs are not, checked. We don't discuss it enough. So maybe to start with, if I'm hearing you right, Agnes, is that for good norms, good new normals, let's make it very visible about how many people are already doing it. And for the harmful old norm, let's also check that maybe everybody has updated their beliefs about open defecation, not necessarily being the most modern and clean way of doing it, and that there's no need to fear any social pressure, right? Like we all realize that going after success without failure it's a good thing. Actually, maybe many more people understand it or embrace it more than we think, and many more people would embrace it than we think, in terms of the old normal. So how can we just not get stuck in that unchecked beliefs?
Right. Yes. And let me just give you this example. So,
okay.
Do you recognize this? So what's that?
It's a gum.
And what does it do?
A gum?
It's
chewing gum?
No.
Oh, it's a floss.
Yeah, dental floss. Yeah. And I will give myself as an example. A year ago, it wasn't in my home. It wasn't even near my home, except the pharmacy across the street. It was there, the closest to my bathroom. Now it's like a natural thing. And if I don't have it, if I went somewhere, I miss it. And the same way, I don't know, like there is a residential building across my building. I don't know how many people actually having this or the other floss, and do they do it? Because my bias before was, it's only dentists do that, because then only dentists speak about it. And again, it might be even a social norm not to speak about dental floss. But if we take it as real as it is, it's very helpful for your teeth.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not habitual. And then you also don't hear people speaking about except dentists or advertisements possibly. And therefore, if we would be able to be the agents of positive social or valuable social norms, just speak with our friends, speak with your relatives, speak with anybody, like say, oh, I've got this new floss or whatever. Oh, I went to the dentist and they suggest this. This is even more sophisticated. And again, I'm kind of still questioning myself. Okay, these technologies evolve, like a basic technologies, like a floss or the brush. But my body will tell me, my teeth will tell me. They will give me the real natural feedback. I will feel it right here. But then if we, again, scale it up to the social norm, it's how I do think, whether it's okay to speak about this. And I'm trying to do that. And yeah, people naturally are resonating and reflecting.
Yeah, that is so fun. I actually realized that there's normative pressure sometimes from my husband. From time to time, I cut short my flossing session, but my husband is very elaborate in his flossing session. It takes him like 15 minutes, right? And so I always feel bad when I finish earlier than him. So I think that's positive, no depression. Just to do the flossing together when you have a roommate, or just like watch TV and just do your floss together, creating more visibility. What are the other norms? Yeah, Agnes, you want to say more
and there
about
is
this topic?
another, yeah, there's another great takeaway from here. Everyone, just do a very tiny, minute experiment. And this is a task for you. So ask 5 of your friends or relationships whether they do flossing. Because I believe
Okay.
you never asked anybody about that. And now
Right.
it's just, this
What's
is how
your
you will
guess?
collect. This is
Yeah,
how you
this
collect
is how we
social.
collect the data. I like it. Yeah. So how do we collect data? How do we fact check on the pluralistic ignorance? So one is to ask people what do they do, but before you ask, write down your estimate so that you can check whether there is a discrepancy. So what do you think if you will ask 10 friends? Let's make it 10. It's easier for the percentage. If you ask 10 friends, how many do you think would say yes that they do floss?
And I think this will go underestimation. I would say 3.
Three?
I'm skeptical.
I'm gonna say 7 out of 10.
You
And
see?
I'm gonna really collect data on it. So let's see. Yeah, that's interesting because I really, yeah, okay. We'll report back next week, like what's and okay, here's another one that you can check on. See whether they would disapprove it if you don't floss. So ask the same friends to say, if I don't floss, would you disapprove my behavior?
Yes.
How many do you think would disapprove it explicitly, or they would say, "Oh, it's just your own choice. Like, why should I care whether you floss or not?"
And again, I think the role plays how close friends you are. The closer friends you are, the more they would be accept the way you are. And then if it's like a weaker tie, then they would be like, maybe that person is not that similar to me anymore after this.
All right, so we're gonna ask these 2 questions. What's your guess of how many would disapprove it explicitly among the people you would ask?
Right.
My guess would be I would expect 3 out of 10 who would disapprove it, because I think most people would feel interfering with my personal choice if I if they would disapprove my flossing. They would feel that I would be embarrassed by their disapproval. So that's my guess.
My guess is my friends, and of course depends whom I ask, but my friends, they kind of know I'm a big spaceman. So my mind is like a galaxy, and anything can happen there. So they would say, okay, that's another thing. So that's all right.
Got it. Okay, we'll report back next week. We
Yes.
have one final question, given that we have talked about so vividly about different new norms. What would be one norm that you want to get rid of, if you can choose anyone to get rid of?
I would really, and that's really honest, deep, and very transparent, emotionally rich thought that I have. Because my observation is a lot of trouble is because it's still socially normal to judge people or societies or cultures by their appearances. It's just that the way how it's social comparison that is driving it, which is kind of essential for our mankind. It serves its purpose. But when social comparison is applied to judge others, I really believe this is where I would like this norm to fade away. And instead, what I would like to emerge is that we are the same genetic material. And the rest doesn't matter. We are the same at the very core of our being. And if that emerges as a norm, a lot of problems fade away. That's my hope.
That's so good. That's so good. Does it mean, for employers to hire people, they should avoid seeing the persons first, right? Try to assess based on a lot of the visual and audio inputs, and make a less biased judgment.
That would be ideal world if we would be able to master how the instincts of the other person are actually telling the story about themselves. Because sometimes we are veiled with our psychological schemas and algorithms that we acquire from society, and then we come to this meeting and then we just play the role and wear not this mask but this mask and we pretend to be somebody else. But if we really are enabling our nature to speak through without our filtering too much of this societal conditioning and filtering, I would think it would be even fastening up our conscious evolution.
I have a strong wish of getting rid of the norm of hiding vulnerability, and not showing a vulnerable side. I think it's in order to understand ourselves or to understand another, we need to accept ourselves as who we are, in some sense, self-compassion, self-love, unconditional love towards ourselves and others. And with the trying to pretend that we are perfect without any imperfection, without any weaknesses, it's just not gonna help us see the reality. And it's also just not necessary as an expectation. So my wish for our new norm would be that everybody embraces their vulnerable side, and we support each other to discover the vulnerable side, to protect the vulnerable side, being gentle and being kind in any processes. And as a result, one related societal norm is small talk. And our center and our there's some scientific findings that shows how no small talk can bond people better. So we use this kind of gamified method. Say, when was the last time you cried and why, as a starter of a conversation, instead of what's the weather like and how are you. And oftentimes we will feel a little uncomfortable to start with, but with the help of a game, it can at least we can blame the card for getting us to talk about the vulnerable side. And oftentimes I found out that both all of my friends and myself really enjoyed sharing those moments of vulnerability. And even for friends that we know already for years, me and my husband, or between even me and my husband, we discover that we don't talk about these kind of topic enough, that we oftentimes don't know the answers. And it was very revealing, and it helps us get to know each other so much better. So when was the last time you cried, Agnes? Just as a way to bring our vulnerable side to the table.
That's a good one. I have trained myself to keep it for luxury moments. and that's a kind of a very philosophical and kind of a answer that kind of leads away from the deep, honest one. I would not precisely be able to tell exactly when I remember emotion possibly related to that. It's just this that I'm not feeling in a good relationship with the world. So and I kind of feel like, what should I do next? So that's one. But generally, my eyes or my physiology is such that I really, the tears drop when I laugh. So every single time when I laugh from my heart, the tears come out, and then people laugh at me, and then the laugh continues for some time.
I see. I see. Yeah. So I actually realized, like, as I asked you this question, I didn't pre-prepare, but I cried yesterday in my not just a Sing game show with Mickey. I was feeling so grateful towards the end of the show, so I was expressing my gratitude towards him, and I realized like that, you know, it could get emotional when you express gratitude. So I actually shed tears while we were live doing the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was happy tears, like you said. Yes. So that's so we would also welcome everyone if you have good no small talk questions or new normals that you think it's worth more visibility, and you would like to share with the world of new normals you have created, please do let us know. We have an email address that you can send to, which is newnormalsgameshow@gmail.com.
Excellent. So yes, this was great. And yeah, we have some homework for everybody. So for other people to ask their 10 friends about whether, like, first of all, writing down what you would expect, how many of your friends actually are flossing their teeth or not. So you first of all write down, so out of 10, how much, 3, 5, 7, whatever number you pick. And then you ask 10 friends and you get the real data. And then you see whether that matches your expectations or your a created answer or not. And we will do the same ourselves, and we will come back to this question next episode after a week. And also then we look forward to receive your ideas if you want to some small talk questions or some social norms that you would like to be discussed or revealed. We would be very welcoming those, and it would be a pleasure for us to do that.
Fantastic. See you next week.
All right. Take care.
See you, Agnis. Bye.